We're rolling.
Hi.
Hey, I'm Sarah.
I'm Francesca.
Welcome back to Critical Babe Theory.
Hi.
Today we have a very special guest, my good friend Brendan. Welcome.
Hi.
Hi.
Brendan and I have been friends for a few years. Can I say where we met?
Of course.
We met in the U.S. Virgin Islands.
Weird.
And we've been friends ever since.
Best friends.
It's kind of like we became friends at Sleepaway Camp.
Oh.
That was kind of the vibe.
Do people vote there?
They do vote.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, so we were in St. Croix, which is one of the U.S. Virgin Islands.
Okay.
I didn't know any of this before moving there.
Yeah.
And I was there working for the federal government.
Boo.
No.
Well,
we support the
I'm just
federal
kidding.
government.
My husband was his coworker.
yeah, we were both working for a judge there. Basically, we were clerking, which basically means that you're working for a judge, basically helping them research their opinions and write them.
Can you, tell them what to do?
You have some
No,
influence.
well, the judges ultimately make the decision, right? They render the ruling, and you basically help them reach that, whether it's researching the law to tell them this is what it says. These are other cases that are similar, and this is
Yeah.
how they turn out, so that's why we should come out this way. The judge ultimately makes the decision, but you basically write the opinion for them with a lot of editing from the judge.
But what if you were, really manipulative
I mean,
hot? Could you get the judge? Not like you.
Hot?
If you had a
Yeah.
hot manipulative clerk. If we're gonna turn into a Sarah Michelle Gellar movie circa late 90s, could you get the judge to write what you wanted?
I think it depends on the judge in terms of the hot thing, because I
Yeah.
feel like your judge would not be swayed by.
was that a Cruel Intentions reference?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
Couldn't you see that? That's the thriller, the teen thriller that was never made or something. I just feel or I guess you're not a teenager when you clerk,
Definitely
but you're
not.
in your early to mid 20s. That's nubile enough.
Yeah. Well, to answer the question, I don't think you really could. I mean, you have
Oh.
influence. Even taking a step back, the cool thing about these jobs is there are, I think, over 400 federal judges in the U.S.
Okay.
Right, and they have their own courts, but they have these clerks who come in and work for them. They're all young attorneys usually. So if we think about the major Supreme Court opinions of forever, Dobbs,
Yeah.
Roe v. Wade, so on, they were all probably written by 30-something-year-olds.
This is exactly what I'm getting at.
Yeah, highly directed by judges, but they are pretty much usually taking the first draft, taking the pen on writing the opinion, and the
Wow.
judge will read it. I mean, we went through so many revisions and versions of opinions, but to answer, and now getting to your question, I mean, you could theoretically lie. You could make up cases and say, well, this case says that we need to do this, but judges are often reading the opinions that they cite to make sure
Okay.
that you're not just flatly lying.
But you have a lot of access and a lot of time
Yeah.
with the judge, so I feel like you do
Psychologically, you could
not
sway them.
yeah, or the breadth of law is so vast that I think that you could, come up with a reasoning and pitch it to the judge.
So are people thinking that they'll just use AI to interpret the law?
Well, not in St. Croix, can I say?
Sure. Well, I don't know what you're going to say.
we can cut this out, but that your judge didn't actually really use the computer at all.
Oh, no, she didn't. And that's okay. Many judges, cases are printed. They're huge case books that have, you don't need to read it on a computer. And most of what she submitted to her, what we submitted to her was written on the computer, but we would print it out and she'd read it just because that's how she consumes information.
So what if there's a fire?
I think we could get books reprinted.
I mean, that's how law used to be for
Yeah.
Is that why they have the Library of Congress?
Yeah, why are you acting like they're about books? You know what books were used
Yeah.
for.
You're saying, but there must be a digital repository somewhere
There
of
is.
her decisions. She
Yeah.
preferred to have printed paper, but there is a digital footprint. It's not that the law
Yeah.
simply exists in a hardcover version.
Certainly not. That this is kind of an interesting segue into our topic today, which is Ezra Klein's book, Abundance. I mean, I guess it was co-written with Derek Thompson.
But he's sort of negligible. I mean, who cares?
Yeah, who?
I don't even know who that is.
I don't know who wrote which part of the book.
I mean, I'm sure Derek wrote the book.
They use the royal we
I
a
didn't
lot.
think about that.
I mean,
Okay.
come on, Ezra's on. He's on the clock.
He's busy.
He is
You know what I
really
mean?
busy.
I will say before we get into a substantive argument, I found the prose styling to be sort of like the Comic Sans of prose styling, personally.
Yeah, it was a pretty easy read, I thought. It's
digestible. Seems like what they were
very
going
simple.
for.
Which is apparently part of Ezra Klein. Like, he kind of believes that politics should be spoken about in simple terms. So I think that is kind of key to his ethos.
Wait, can I take it in a different direction totally for just 2 seconds?
Yeah, go for it.
I'm into men wearing chains now.
Really?
I think it's really it's a political signal that we're reclaiming masculinity. Don't you think?
I've never really thought about that. I just kind of thought it was a fun thing. This is actually my grandpa's chain, like an old gold chain.
Even tighter.
And it used to have this fat jade piece on it
That's
that
really
I didn't like
cool.
as much, but
Yeah.
I've just kind of taken the chain.
Yeah, I think it's a really good sign that men are reclaiming something that's both adorning but fundamentally masculine. I think that, like, because we've been asking a lot, like, are the men okay?
Like the male peacock.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
like grounded in like a grounded testosterone. I just think it's a really positive sign because I'm talking about straight men. A lot of straight men these days have started wearing chains, and I think it's a really good bellwether.
There are some straight men, who could not pull off a chain. Let's be honest.
Like who? Andrew Cuomo?
I feel like he can pull off a chain.
I think
just
so,
like looking
too.
at him, he looks like a heavy chain
Do you
wearer.
think he wears like? I bet he wears like something on his. I could see him wearing something on his wrist that was like silver, but like a thick chain.
Yeah.
I feel like he wears a wife beater.
He's
For
stretched
Yeah.
out.
And everybody accused him of having nipple rings.
I was just gonna say. that.
That's gross.
He seems very pro jewelry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, he's Italian. I feel like the
Yeah.
Italians are more
oh,
flamboyant
that's
and
true,
more.
that's true.
Yeah.
Does he have a wife?
No.
Has he
I think he
ever
was
had
married.
a wife?
I think he was married. He definitely has a daughter.
Oh,
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Right. Okay. So he's not a secret closet case. That would be kind of more fun.
I don't think Andrew Cuomo is gay.
Oh yeah, right.
Well, yeah,
That's
based
also
on
The
his
public
history, right?
sexual
Yeah.
harassment cases speak to his
Yeah.
heterosexuality.
That would be like an amazing beard cover, like your cover for being gay is you just sexually harass interns all the
That's
time.
awful.
You know what
Yeah.
I mean? I could see a world in which that's true. Okay, so sorry, I've taken us off topic.
No, it's fine.
Can I close out one last
Yes,
point?
please. I
Sorry,
love
I
this
just don't want to leave
assiduous
this part.
way of thinking. It's great. It's so masculine. We're into it.
Go for
This
it.
last point about the judge, like
Yeah,
influencing a judge's opinion, I think it's an interesting one. But there are many times where I wrote opinions where my judge was like, I disagree. Like, I don't think this is right. And there were many times where I would write two different opinions going either way because it was a really tough decision. And many times she disagreed with me, and many times she would actually remember cases for obscure bodies of law. Like, oh, there's this one case that said this, this, and this.
Yeah.
Have you looked at that one? So I think it'd be pretty hard to deceive her, and she checked a lot of the work.
But you know what this is making me thinking? Was Anita Hill clerking for Thomas,
For
or was she
Thomas?
just?
I think she
his
was a
assistant?
staffer. I thought she was. I think it was.
Do you want me to fact check?
I'm curious
Yeah.
because if he was like sexually obsessed with her,
I think she was a staffer,
You think
and
she
I
was a
think it
staffer?
might have been when Thomas was working in a position that was not as a judge.
oh,
I
Yeah,
think-
he was
Is
her
that-
supervisor at the United States Department of Education and the
Okay.
Equal Employment Opportunity
okay.
Commission.
Because I could see if you were in a Clarence Thomas Anita Hill dynamic, maybe if you could turn the tables, you could influence.
Like Monica Lewinsky could have influenced Clinton's political agenda, but she chose not to.
There are instances, there are many unfortunately, Me Too situations that have happened with judges.
I mean, I can imagine
there's
there's a
a-
lot of power.
There's a famous judge from the Ninth Circuit, Alex Kaczynski,
Mm-hmm.
who was known for showing his female clerks porn.
Like he would make them sit down and watch it with him.
I think they were usually photo. It's really
Yeah,
sick
yeah,
shit, and
yeah.
he ended up resigning as a result of that scandal. But yeah, that unfortunately happens.
I'm just saying, if you took it to the next level, like the Russian honeypot level, there must be like Russian assets who have infiltrated as attractive young women who are trying to sway judges.
It's worth a shot.
It's definitely a very long con to do that, to go to law school, and it's hard to get clerkships.
I know. I feel like the Russians are all about the long con, though.
They are.
Yeah.
I think the last thing I'll mention about this, but if you're talking about being the whisper in a judge's ear, I think one instance in which that's really where that does happen is usually for sentencing. So we worked on a lot of sentencings for criminal cases, and quite often there are sentencing guidelines that basically, and they are very structured.
Yeah.
Based on the crime, based on the dollar amount, it is very specific, and it will basically spit out a range, 3 years to 5 years. Sometimes the range can be as wide as 8 to 12 years or something like that. And many times we would sit in the back of the chambers and we would talk with the judge, sharing with her what we thought, where we should land within that range. And she listened to our opinion. So I mean, that could be, I don't know how often we swayed her, but she would take our opinions there, and that's one where there is discretion, where a judge and a clerk are.
So imagine if you had a clerk who was particularly vindictive or punishing, right? And who, it just personality wise.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of young conservative clerks are that.
So then they would influence on the higher end of punishment, on the more longer sentences.
Well, I think a lot about you like the cases that you guys saw involving the Venezuelan drug smugglers,
Right.
and how like a couple of those cases came up during your time as a clerk.
Specifically Venezuelan
migrants.
Well,
Maybe
oftentimes there were drugs being smuggled from Venezuela, which is a very topical issue right now. But sometimes they're from other parts of the Caribbean. Like there were cases where, and these were really just fishermen who they would offer, we'll give you $5,000 to just take this cargo in some remote location to drop off to another boat. Many times they came from Tortola, other parts of the British Virgin Islands.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
But what I think about is the sentencing, right? And like that these guys, these poor fishermen got like a couple of years in jail, usually in addition to time served, right? And like how now they're just being extra judicially executed without any, like
due
these,
process.
that like before this, these are not people who would have gotten life sentences in jail or, gone up for the death sentence,
Yeah, no, that's right. I mean, I probably won't discuss any specific cases, but generally speaking, these were instances where it could be a boy as young as like 17 or 18 years old who just wanted to, they gave me a job and I did it.
Yeah.
They probably know what's on those boats,
right.
These bales, of stuff, but it's just simply, how to drive boats, just take this from here to here.
They were
Basically
not the
couriers.
masterminds of the operation.
No, they weren't. But they had their day in court, right? So that's something that I don't know enough about the current cases. The government's not really disclosing much about these Venezuelan drug boats, right? But
the last boat that they bombed, they said they like actually didn't even know who was on it. So they just like saw a boat and dropped, a drone shot on it.
Yeah.
So we actually have no idea whether or not they were just fishermen. And in fact, it's like very likely that they were not drug smugglers. There's no evidence.
Right. And they could maybe at worst just be mules too, right? Like not really involved in the drug trade. Beyond.
Yeah. Do you think like drug kingpins are getting on these small ass fishermen boats and risking their lives on the high seas?
Probably the big drug kingpins are having state dinners with the presidents, right, of the countries that they're associated with. Like these guys are not. I feel like from all those movies and like TV shows, they make it seem like the drug lords are like sequestered away and alone, but like there has to be corruption throughout the government for them to have the institutional support and the logistics to run that amount of drugs.
Like use your mind. Think about the Sopranos. Was Tony Soprano like doing the petty criminal work? No, he was the mastermind. He had his
Christopher
Conciliaires. Yes.
Moltisanti.
We know this. It's in the canon.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's the argument that Trump's making, is that Maduro, the president of Venezuela, is the head.
And he's not. There's no evidence speaking to that.
I don't know enough about the issue.
There's not.
But probably Maduro might be friends with him. But also, like, Trump has probably kicked it with other presidents of other nations who are friends with the drug king. It's just like with the billionaires and the Jeffrey Epstein. It's like, if you're that kind of rich, they're all hanging out, man. Do you know what I mean? They're
It's
all
likely.
hanging out.
It would make sense.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm fully convinced Trump had an oh shit moment in 2016. He's like, I'm probably going to go to jail. I'm going to lose my money. Maybe he was going to file for bankruptcy again. And he had this brilliant idea of, maybe if I became president, all of this would go away. And it didn't go away after the first term. It continued through 2020 and onward. And he ran again because he's like, oh, fuck, I might actually still go to prison.
I think, yeah. I mean, I think he will take a page out of Biden's book if he doesn't go for a third term and, like, pardon his whole family
Yeah.
and all of the administration. This is actually my husband's theory, but that, like, basically all of these people are, like, acting with impunity because they anticipate that they will all get pardons before he's out of office.
The interesting thing is that he didn't do that after his first term.
I think he didn't think of it.
I think he thought of it.
How could he not think of it?
I don't know.
That doesn't mean he won't do it after his second term, though. I mean, he very well probably will. He should.
Yeah. I mean, I think he had a little more propriety in his first term, right? Like, he had a little bit more of, like, the classic the establishment
Jefferson
Republicans.
sessions.
Yeah.
But wait, have you guys ever seen the video of the White House press correspondents' dinner where Trump's there and Obama makes a joke about roast him about the birther stuff, and you can see on Donald Trump's face the decision that he makes to run for president?
No, I actually
It's
haven't
the classic,
seen that.
like, the making of a criminal, the making of a villain.
Yeah, I mean, it was like Obama, like, he got off a one really good joke at, like, what expense for this nation, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think Trump's gotten the last laugh.
Yeah,
at least so far.
I mean, Obama, I feel like, is he even that illustrious? I know people like to read his, like, best of books or what are his favorite records this year, but, like, he doesn't hold. He's just off sequestered in fucking Martha's Vineyard, man.
Well, you know what was on his best books of the year?
What?
Abundance by Ezra Klein.
No way.
Yeah.
Of course it was.
Oh, I thought you were like, really?
No. It's on the list.
Yeah, let me start. Let me kick us off with a quote by Barack Obama.
Oh, fab.
Okay. I don't care how much you love working people. They can't afford a house because all the rules in your state make it prohibitive to build, and zoning prevents multifamily structures because of NIMBY. I don't want to know your ideology because you can't build anything. It does not matter. Boom, roasted, abundance style.
Kind of like the line, because of NIMBY. Never used just because NIMBY. Never heard it used that way.
Do we need to define terms? NIMBY is not in my backyard, and YIMBY is yes in my backyard. I feel like it comes from California. I feel like it comes from where we're from. No?
NIMBYism?
I think so.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, I mean, Berkeley.
Definitely probably the coastal areas.
Yeah, for sure.
But it's not just in liberal areas. I mean, you can definitely be critical of the liberal areas that are like that, but definitely very conservative places too. Like Georgetown in DC is an area where they don't want any additional housing being built or a subway system.
True.
Are you familiar with that?
I mean, my experience there, I could tell that was the vibe, certainly.
Those old buildings, they're so nice the way they are. They're so small. They're so tidy.
Right. They don't want to bring in the riffraff.
Yeah. But just like Park Avenue, there's no public transportation on Park Avenue. The crosstown buses don't even stop at Park Avenue. They skip from Madison to Lex.
We don't want your bus riders loitering on our block.
Yeah, isn't that wild?
That. That's a pretty strong play to be like, in New York City, to be like, don't stop on my street. Such a massive boulevard.
Yeah. Isn't that crazy?
I actually have a conspiracy theory that probably could be easily proven either way, that if you do like Google Maps or Waze, it won't even take you on Park Avenue, and that's the fact. Like it makes you avoid driving on Park Avenue.
I have never been directed to drive up Park Avenue ever.
I don't drive in this city.
So, Brendan, like, what is your, obviously we've talked about Ezra Klein on this podcast, alternatively making him public enemy number one, and more recently, Francesca announced that she doesn't even care about him anymore. So what is your relationship with Ezra Klein before this book?
To be honest, I've never had a relationship with him. Before this book, I don't have one now. I think he's fine. I honestly didn't have huge opinions of him. I haven't really thought of him. Like, I respect him as a thinker, as a writer, a journalist, especially as a political thinker, but I can't say I think about him very much.
Okay, so you are largely neutral.
Yeah, honestly neutral, like no opinion.
Okay.
But like, you know, I know he's smart. I think he has decent takes.
Yeah.
Okay.
What inspired you to read this book?
It being on Obama's list of books. No, I'm kidding. I think there's a period where it's a part of the zeitgeist, whether in New York. I mean, it's also the post-mortem of the recent election, too. And a lot of people have been talking about it. Zoran talks about it. So I think it's a relevant piece in the lexicon right now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Can you kind of mansplain to us, like, the main ideas of this book?
Can I just regular explain it?
If you must.
I think so the book is called Abundance, and it's really just based on this. It's called Abundance because it's based on this principle that so much of politics takes on this air of scarcity. Mm-hmm. It's very zero-sum. It's just we don't have enough resources, so we need to kind of go through pains to decide what to fund. I mean, that's kind of what's happening right now, right, with the healthcare and the government shutdown. Mm-hmm. And what this book, the whole premise underlying this book is that we are the world's wealthiest country, maybe the wealthiest country in the history of the world, right, in terms of resources and the things that we can do. Mm-hmm. And so why is so much of our politics shrouded in this sense of scarcity? We can have a very abundant nation. We can have a lot. So why don't we have that? So it really just asks that question first, and that's the name of the book. It digs into a few thoughts about how we can reach that. One of them is that we need to build a lot more. Mm-hmm. We need to build more housing. We need more green energy. We need healthcare, things like that. And then the next step is, okay, well, what's keeping us from doing that? And a lot of that is just a lot of red tape. A lot of red tape that was really helpful in the time that they were put in place, whether it's the 70s or the 80s, but are no longer serving their purpose now. Mm-hmm. It goes into a lot of case studies about situations where the government hasn't done a great job, and other case studies where the government has done a good job to kind of inform how we might want to proceed moving forward.
It just sounds like a great way for it sounds really good for men. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, we should build a lot of stuff and give men like greater feeling of purpose in this world right now, in this highly feminized world, you know?
I didn't view it really as a gendered take.
Well, I just think our friend Ruby, who will be coming on the podcast at some point, talks about, like, if it were up to women, we'd all just be living in mud huts. You know, like this, like, that, like, the desire, the impetus, the impulse to build is, like, a very male characteristic. And then, but, like, which I personally identify with.
I get what you're saying, because I definitely feel like my husband has gotten on a lot of monologues about something that the book addresses, that's a separate point, but about how invention has really stalled and that we should have, you know, access to, you know, I guess, like, what's an example? Like shit that flies, like, you know what I mean?
Stuff that guys are into.
Jetpacks, flying cars,
and big
Your husband
buildings.
is making the argument that we should have more of that.
He's just making, which Ezra Klein also makes in this book, but, like, we just had, like, the development of technology, whether that's in medicine or in, you know, transportation, or in, I mean, in a more dark sense, like, defense weapons or weapons of war. Like, it was so rapid, and it has kind of stagnated now.
If you like something in the book early on in Abundance, they give an example of like, if you look at the difference between like the 1980s or the 1970s and today, like, yes, we have our computers, but otherwise the physical landscape, the cars, it actually doesn't look that different. There hasn't been that much like rapid expansion and invention. It seems like it's actually kind of stagnated in terms of like new technologies other than like the computers and the phones, but everything else is pretty similar. Whereas if like we think about the Jetsons, right, like back in the 50s they watched the Jetsons cartoon and it was like, into the year 2000 you'd be in flying cars and you'd be doing, what are they doing? Star Trek, they
like teleport.
They teleport. You know what I mean? Like all of that stuff. Like it actually, the world looks fairly similar. Which is, so here's my crazy thought. Maybe we shouldn't. But like, if our politics is so marked by nostalgia across the board on the left and the right. You know, is it like, are we so wedded to nostalgia because unfortunately we've been living in this physical world that still very much resembles the one that people lived in 50 years ago? So it's like our lived environment is encouraging this nostalgic paradigm. Is that too stony of a thought?
I mean, I think that...
Pretty stony. That's a shower thought.
I think there's always been nostalgia, right? Like, people are always, you know, people like bicycles. I remember, like, you know, like people are like, women shouldn't ride bicycles because I don't know,
bad for their uteruses.
Yeah, and like women shouldn't be moving that fast. You know, it's not it's not right. But I think there's always been nostalgia. But I think in terms of like the Jetsons and that, I think there's like real arguments to be made that it's like, you know, if we look at the developments of history, we should have a cure for cancer by now. Like, why don't we have a cure for cancer? You know, and like what Ezra Klein argues is that government spending towards invention, towards taking risks, is like very low, and there's a very high bureaucratic burden. Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so keep telling me.
And like carbon capture. I mean, like some of these things just aren't national priorities, and that's what he's saying. He's saying a lot of these things should be declared. Well, this is where it gets really interesting because a lot of the book is an argument that basically for more executive power, whether that's a president or a governor, like he's obsessed with this time that like a bridge collapsed in Philadelphia and Josh Shapiro declared a state of emergency, and a bridge that like otherwise would have taken 2 years to build took 12 days. And so he really heralds that as like a great success and like something to be emulated. Now we're currently living in a state where Donald Trump has been just using executive orders, bing, bang, boom, and declaring states of emergency on Tren de Aragua, et cetera, et cetera. And I mean, this is kind of, I would say, what Ezra Klein is arguing for, this kind of use of power. Now, of course, now he's kind of like taken a step back and said, well, I believe that like the repealing of bureaucratic red tape should have been from a legislative like process.
He doesn't like the executive order of it all.
I think he's kind of arguing for like a benign
dictator.
Like what the logical explanation
technologists always want.
I kind of viewed him, so that you gave that example about Shapiro and then rebuilding a freeway. I mean, another example was Project Warp Speed, which is the creation of the mRNA vaccine for COVID. I didn't really view him as making a point about the executive necessarily being more powerful, just simply observing the fact that government has been able to get a lot done when it worked towards something. And ideally, that's the combination of both an executive and a legislative branch. But I didn't view him really having an opinion or sharing an opinion on what is referred to as a unitary executive theory, which is this idea that you should have like an all-powerful executive. It was...
Yeah. But I think he repeatedly returns to examples like FDR, where it's like, you know, like he sees the New Deal as something that like we should be emulating now. Like, you know.
It's just about like, but who's unitary? Do you know what I mean? Like FDR, we'll let him have the unitary. Trump, we don't want him to have the unitary. But the thing is, like, if you're going to believe in the unitary, you have to believe you can't just use it at whatever purpose you want. Do you know what I mean? So I think there's an inherent tension in Ezra Klein's own worldview.
And he's claiming, like he does say in the book, that he's this is a value proposition. This is a vision. It's not a policy, you know,
Right.
direction. You know, it's
I think it is. That's what the book to me was like, oh, this guy really wants to map out policy.
he explicitly says that's not what he's trying to do. But
Okay. All right.
It's honestly, it's a very fair take that you have, Francesca, because I feel like that's been a very common criticism of the book, that it kind of bashes liberals, and it doesn't really give that many solutions. But in my opinion, I don't think they're trying to do that. And he actually says toward the end of the book, this is on page 216, what we are proposing is less a set of policy solutions than a new set of questions around which our politics should revolve. What is scarce that should be abundant? What is difficult to build that should be easy? What inventions do we need that we do not yet have? I think a lot of people make this book out to be more than what it's actually trying to do. It's just simply it's trying to say, let's rethink the way we think about politics. But it's not trying to be the silver bullet for solving everything. And it can't. Like a book can't really do that.
But I think it's a little bit politically naive to be like, we're just here to ask questions. You know what I mean? I mean, look, what is he... But I guess he has succeeded, right? Because then a bunch of Democratic lawmakers read the book. Maybe Newsom read it. Maybe Newsom's like, maybe I will get that high-speed rail going. You know what I mean?
Ezra Klein's really fucking pissed about that.
I mean,
high-speed rail.
it's
I
embarrassing.
think everyone is.
It's pretty embarrassing.
I want to hear your take on the high-speed rail as Californians.
Yeah. Do you know how long it takes to drive to LA? How long does it take you to drive to LA?
I think it's probably about like 5.5 to 6
Okay, that's
hours
so.
almost
If
now.
I was gonna
From
drive,
San Francisco.
it would take me like 7 hours because I drive kind of slow. Yeah, it takes a long ass
It's a long
time.
And the high-speed rail was allegedly going to get people from
2
LA
hours?
to San Francisco and vice versa in 2 hours. And
Yeah, that would be amazing, man.
Yeah, and I feel like they've been talking about that project since I was a child.
Yeah.
Right? And it just hasn't really taken off.
it's
Yeah.
kind of like a Second Avenue subway situation.
It's worse than the Second Avenue
Yeah.
subway. The Second Avenue subway, by some miracle, or I guess the extension on the Q, exists.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It happened.
Yeah, and just to give a little bit of background about the context in this book, right? As I mentioned at the top, there's a few case studies that they raise. 2 of the ones that are poor, like case studies in which the government has not acted very well, has been the Second Avenue subway and the immense amount of resources that it's taken to basically just have a few tunnels built. And the California high-speed rail, how both of those projects have been seen as failures based on the fact that, well, they just haven't been done, and they've been extremely costly. But then they take 2 other examples of, okay, here are times in which the government has been able to pull its resources together to do really impressive things. Again, that's Project Warp Speed and the rebuilding of the freeway that you mentioned under Shapiro. And there's many more. It goes into the history of DACA, for example, or DARPA, excuse me, and how the government basically came up with the internet, right? That those were government projects.
This was effectively the department that funded the Manhattan Project during World War II. Yes.
I think so. I don't fully remember that.
Yeah.
That could be right, but
And that a byproduct of their research was like, they got closer to malaria treatment. They
While they
invented
were
the
researching
internet.
bombs? How did that happen?
I don't know.
How do you work on bombs and get to malaria?
Well, I'm not saying that it was the same project. I'm saying it was the same department that funded the Manhattan Project.
Okay.
Basically, what happened was someone came to FDR at the start of World War II, said that we are not technologically at a point where we can compete with the Germans. And so they put all of this money and resources into developing technology, which is kind of the history of America and of technology, that it always came out of war, government, but specifically at times of war.
yeah, I mean, there are times in which we have been stressed to innovate, right? And I think one of the points that he's making is that when the government funds programs for innovation, you end up getting many more things that you wouldn't have imagined before.
Right.
The internet is one of those examples, right? Like they didn't really set out to create what the internet is today. They were just like, we need some way of linking up different parts of the government, and that's where it starts.
Yeah, and I think that Ezra Klein is pretty flippant because he talks about the the Office of Scientific Research and Development, which I think later became DARPA, which was like where the origins of the internet came from. And he talks about how they invented the flu vaccine and malaria treatments and all this stuff, and like saved all of these lives down the road, right? Like how many people's lives have been saved by malaria treatment, but at the same time, like they also were inventing the nuclear bomb, and that a lot of, I mean, he doesn't go into this at all, but what I was thinking about reading that was like about the kind of catch-22 of these technological developments. Like, for example, the person who invented fertilizer, Fritz Haber.
Yeah. Like nitrogen fertilizer?
I think so, yeah. He basically like is responsible for the reason that like half of the world's population is able to subside, you know, on food.
We get so much more productivity out of our planting.
Yeah, he's also the father of chemical warfare, and his research was used to invent Zyklon B, which was used in Nazi gas chambers. So like, I think that Ezra Klein is like, you know, if we put money and resources towards technological developments, it will like always be good.
But that's exactly like what my problem with the book was. Is I was like, there's just this naive supposition that technology will save us. And here's what I don't get, because from my perspective, technology has not saved us. And I can get into why I believe that in a moment. But like this idea that like something would take a distinct U-turn for no discernible reason and go from being destructive to a salvation is not something that I can wrap my head around. Because I remember, have I told the story about the air conditioning unit and how I was dating that German physicist? Have I told you that story on the pod?
Those are two things I wouldn't expect to hear in one sentence.
I kind of forgot the story.
Okay, so basically I was like dating this physicist who was German, which I feel like being German kind of exacerbates any physicist. The two things really like feed into each other. And he was like,
being Russian, maybe.
Yeah. And I was saying, to kind of piss him off, I was like, I don't believe in physics, you know? and he was like, you don't believe that your air conditioner works. And he pointed to my air conditioner. And I was like, I don't believe that a system in which we need to burn fossil fuels to condition the air of our homes where it is livable while outside, because of that, it gets hotter and hotter, is a system that is working. Right? I believe that literally and physically cold air comes out of my air conditioning. But to me, that does not therefore mean that it works and that it functions. And so what I see when I read abundance is like the processes by which we have had our industrial revolution, our technological revolution, has had so many negative impacts, one of which is we may not even be able to live on this world, this beautiful planet in the Goldilocks zone of habitability in a vast and desolate universe, right? In a mere 250 years, we may eradicate ourselves from the face of the earth because of the technology we created. To me, that is not a technology that is working. So why the fuck would we need more of it?
Well, actually, some of the examples that they give is green energy, right? So, I mean, we have this massive population that, unfortunately, like, we still need to live in homes that are warmed in the winter and probably cooled a little bit in the summers, right? People actually die of heat stroke.
More so now than ever with global warming.
So the thinking is, you know, we need to invest in stuff like nuclear power, solar energy, wind energy, things like that. So, you know, it's right that technology has probably got us into this mess, but there's a decent argument that it'll get us out of it too.
I guess but I'm like, sure, it's a possibility, but like, show me the evidence when that has happened before. Like we could talk about this in the context of AI, which obviously hasn't played out yet. But to me, I see a technology that's like incredibly dangerous, right? Very risky. But people are like, but if we just use it long enough, it'll solve all our problems.
I mean, I think that Ezra Klein is actually pretty pragmatic and when he talks about AI, because what he's saying right now is that it's too expensive. It's that there's too many barriers to building data centers here, and we don't have enough energy for them. So right now people are in talks in the Middle East to put data centers there. And he's like, we do not want our AI data centers in the Middle East because we are building something that like basically has the potential to be a digital nuclear bomb.
So I'm saying if something has the potential to be a digital nuclear bomb, we just shouldn't build it.
But that's, yes.
I don't think we should have built the bomb. I don't think that what DARPA, like, yes, it saved us from malaria, perhaps, but like, I would prefer to live in a world that did not have the atomic bomb, personally. And so when people are like, but no, if we just push the technology faster, then we'll be okay. And I'm like, based on what evidence in the past has that ever been true?
I think another example is the vaccines, right? Like healthcare. I think what you're pointing out is, sadly, when you invest in innovation, sometimes that can lead to things that are good and things that are bad. And you just hope that you direct the money to the right areas and people do the right things with that technology.
But to me, that's a hope is a feeble thing to base the potential extinction of our species on. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think to your point, I think my largest critique of the book, and where I think Ezra Klein is really naive, is in his diagnosis of American bureaucracy as being a result of liberals being obsessed with like, what's the word? With compliance. Mm-hmm. And to a certain extent, like, he doesn't really say this explicitly, but it comes up in a few examples, like DEI and wokeness. You know, he talks about how hard it is to, you know, that there's certain affordable housing projects that have so many requirements, including like that they have to employ small businesses that are minority owned. And like, so he doesn't do a full Donald Trump style thing on it. But like, this to me rings very false. And I think that, you know, the book could have perhaps been a little bit more useful if he dove a little bit more into like who is benefiting from this large bureaucracy. And I think the answer is corporations and wealthy individuals. And I think that like, yes, they are like incomprehensibly complicated, but I do think that someone is benefiting from this. And so I think to your point, like, would there be such a risk of, you know, putting money towards technology that could go one of two ways if we did not have like defense contractors and all of these other corporations that have so much to gain financially?
Yeah, I mean, I was talking to somebody at a dinner party. I was in San Francisco. No, I guess I wouldn't have seen you. So I was in San Francisco and I had dinner and I was like shocked. It was in the marina and it was like all tech people and developers. And they were all like kind of gun carrying libertarians, which was like sort of odd. Shocking.
Actually,
but,
no, that kind of makes sense too.
It's changed now,
right?
Which is like
Peter Thiel is libertarian.
But I was like sort of in shock, having not been to a dinner party in San Francisco in a long time. And I was talking to one guy who like who sold medical devices to the government, and he was just like, oh, the contracts we give the government. He was like, we just fucking rip them off. And he's like, and they know we're ripping them off because we got a deal. So we charge them way more than we need to, and they pay us way more than they need to. And I was just, and he's like, and that's just how it goes. And I was like, what?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
No, totally. And I think that this idea that like that bureaucracy is bad, and I would go so far as to say like violent, like this is something like, have either of you read David Graeber? No.
Yeah. He wrote Debt, right?
He wrote Debt, and he also wrote this book called Utopia of Rules. He's an anarchist. He's responsible for like We Are the 99%. He was kind of a leader of Occupy Wall Street. Okay. He's dead now. He was professionally an anthropologist. He died pretty young. But he wrote an entire book that is from a much more like leftist perspective about bureaucracy, you know, and it's kind of like the leftist version of abundance in terms of just like, but he views bureaucracy as like enabling structural violence, and that it's actually purposeful, you know, that, and I think if we think about something like healthcare, for example, like we have this like vast bureaucratic establishment that subsidizes healthcare in the US, right? Rather than just like one department that it grants universal health care, like in Canada, where everyone just has their card and they can go to the doctor when they need to. And, you know, like it's complicated and expensive on purpose because people are benefiting from it, being like pharmaceutical companies and health insurance companies, and there's like a lot of money for lobbyists and for special interests to like make the government incentivized to keep that bureaucracy and enable it. And meanwhile, people literally die, you know? So I think, and the same thing with food stamps, it's like, rather than focusing on, and this is something Ezra Klein talks about, on the supply side of things, we're focused on the demand, right? So like we give food vouchers so people can afford food rather than making wages higher and food affordable. And I think that's something that is like really current, that kind of displays this really well, is the current mayoral election, right? Because like Zohran Mamdani won the Democratic primary with this really clear vision of like making New York City affordable. And there has been a large billionaire coalition who has rallied around Cuomo with millions of dollars, including Michael Bloomberg, who one time said that like living in New York City is a luxury good, okay, and are acting as a kind of referendum or veto on like the will of the people, that like we want a more affordable city and we want the government to have a role in that. And I think that is a kind of exposing the dynamic that is at play with the entire US government right now.
Yeah, I would completely agree with them.
I think when we talk about bureaucracy, it's important to make the distinction between bureaucracy where you have other players involved. Like healthcare is a good example, right? Are we talking about the healthcare industry as a whole, or are we talking about the bureaucracy within government that leads to certain inefficiencies, for example, building the Second Avenue subway? The healthcare piece is an interesting one, right? Because that's one where maybe having a little bit more government bureaucracy or government organization can help get us out of this situation. If you have a government that can negotiate the prices of drugs, for example, right, or to cap the prices of drugs, that's one where having a little bit more government in that system would probably benefit everyone, right? There's that stat about how the U.S. probably pays 3 times more than any other country for healthcare and probably gets worse healthcare as a result.
Yeah.
One of the examples in this book was the price of Ozempic. Actually, we pay 10 times more for Ozempic in this country because the healthcare companies just have their way.
You're all fat because of the government.
Yeah, so I mean, I think what the book is pointing out is that there are instances in which the government can be bigger to make things better for its people.
Yeah.
And in the U.S., we've unfortunately there's the famous Reagan quote about how, you know, the scariest words you can hear is, I am the government and I'm here to help you. Yeah. There's this huge movement of how thinking that smaller government is better. We've turned the government into this boogeyman. Yeah. And there's this quote that Barney Frank actually has said. He says, government is simply the name we give to the things we choose to do together. Totally. Right? Like that's what the government can be. It can be a way for us to collectively bargain for cheaper healthcare, for better transportation, for childcare. It doesn't need to be this boogeyman if we have the right people in power to implement these policies.
Yeah. But I guess what I'm saying is, like, I don't necessarily believe that like universal healthcare would require a bigger government or more government spending, right? Like based on statistics, it seems like we would actually all spend less on healthcare.
What's so inefficient is like, because I've also heard with doctors, maybe we just talked about this recently, like overbilling, multiple billing people, like, because they're just trying to get as much money as they can because it's like a for-profit industry. Like, so you're doing procedures on people or ordering tests. I think it's mostly in testing, like ordering tests that they don't need. Right. Like, there's all this bloat to the system because it shouldn't actually fundamentally be an incentivized by profit system, because it's healthcare and everybody's gonna fucking die. You know what I mean? So to have like a profit-based system where all of your clients are gonna croak, it just doesn't really work. You know what I mean? So I don't know why I was talking about that.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, so I think what the book, I think it just reshapes the way that point that I just made about how the government doesn't need to be this boogeyman. I mean, we can get involved in local politics and we become the government.
Exactly.
You know, it's
yeah.
not just this.
It's not this other. It's not
yeah, it
this like
doesn't need to be this
separate other
amorphous-
thing.
Right.
Like an alien that's landing or something that's going to take us all over, that we should run fun and become like libertarians with our guns.
Yeah. And something that Ezra Klein talks about is that like being a member of the US government or being a civil servant, it is not like a job that the highest quality people want, because they could get paid a lot more doing the same thing for a consulting company, right? So like part of and they're also like working in government, it's kind of like it's shitty, you know? I mean, like, you're treated like shit, like all these people who are currently not getting paid because of the shutdown.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And
Who's ever going to want to go into government again after like all of these shutdowns? You know what I mean? Or, I mean, it's the big thing with the air traffic controllers. Like, they already had there was a huge deficit of air traffic controllers going through school. And, like, even more people are going to drop out now because you're like, well, why would I want to do this job where everyone's bitching me all the time and they're not even going to pay me?
yeah, you're not going to get the best and brightest, you know? And so something he's kind of advocating for, and he talks about the success of adding 755 cars to the BART system in San Francisco, is that they did most of the engineering in-house and they got it done faster and cheaper than budgeted. Wow. And it's because we're so, you know, because of this fear of big government that we, you know, contract everything out to the private sector.
No.
And as we know, these consulting companies, like
They're just going to rip you off. Their deliverables are shit and they're going to rip you off.
And they don't necessarily have the knowledge, you know, they don't have the regional specialty. Like
McKinsey cannot solve all your problems, unfortunately.
Only God can.
I think to your point, Sarah, there's one part in the book where he says, in countries like China and Singapore, civil service is held in high esteem, and the brightest graduates compete in nationwide tests to win government jobs. In the United States, the word bureaucrat is tossed around as an epithet.
Yeah.
Republicans have spent decades demonizing government, and they have largely won the argument.
Yeah.
The dominant belief is that anything that can be outsourced or privatized should be.
Totally.
That's not necessarily wrong, right? Like everyone can think about their experiences at the DMV as an example.
Totally.
I think the call is just simply not necessarily for more or less government, but just simply good government.
Yeah.
I think about Singapore. I mean, it's not really fair to compare the U.S. to Singapore, right? But in Singapore, the government employees these market rates for what they would make in the private sector.
Wow.
And it attracts the best talent to government, which is probably the biggest and most important company in any single country, right? I mean, maybe the U.S. should take that same kind of approach.
Yeah.
Because it does pay back dividends.
Yeah.
Right, to have a well-functioning government.
I mean, Singapore is doing, for how tiny they are, they're doing great, right?
I mean, I think that's why it's successful, right? Because it's just a city-state. That's why I was saying it's unfair to compare the U.S. to that, because it's just scale-wise, it's much smaller, so you can do those kinds of things.
80% of people in Singapore live in public housing. Yeah, totally. And I think that like the people incentivized to get into government, you know, like I think of Nancy Pelosi, obviously, like that she's getting that consulting rate money by, you know, through her investments. And I think that it would be like ideal if the government paid people more and then did not allow them
or their spouses.
Yeah. To trade in the stock market, because it completely throws off who their loyalties are to.
Yeah, I think there's this kind of sad, maybe snake kind of eating itself situation where when I have these conversations with my very conservative friends, they feel like there's too much money in government and they want to cut everything. I mean, that's kind of what's happening now, right? They cut everything. And as a result, these government bodies can't really do anything. And they point to that and they say, see, government's not good at doing this.
Yeah.
So they continue to use that as an example of cutting government. But they can't do it. It can't be successful because they don't have the resources to be successful.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I would agree with the diagnosis. I think government is inefficient and unproductive. And I do feel like this book reads a little bit like a self-help book of like how to be more productive, you know, for the American government. And I think that, like, again, it does not get into like what are the deeper problems and incentives for the government to be inefficient and unproductive, which I think goes back to corporate money. And there was an article in New York Mag about like socialism versus abundance and kind of the Bernie Sanders leftism versus the abundance liberalism. And I don't think that they're in complete opposition. And I think they're complementary to each other in a way.
Well, I think that's why there's such a degree of like, what's the noun of benign? Benignity?
Banality?
Banality, there we go. There's a banality to both the prose styling and the presentation of ideas in this book, because I think he does truly want it to, Ezra Klein wants it to be somewhat politically neutral, right? Like his vision could be, I mean, of course, you're never going to get the conservatives on board with anything relating to green energy because they don't believe it's real, or they don't believe climate change is real. But I do think there's a neutrality in its purpose. Yeah. Because he wants it to be, it's about a vision, right? He's all about cultivating a vision.
It's interesting. In the beginning of the book, he actually makes it very clear that this is a book for liberals. Mm-hmm. But the interesting thing is when you actually read the content, nothing in it is really that controversial, right? No. We should make things easier to build so people can have places to live.
Yeah.
We should continue to invest in innovation. Like, none of these things are controversial. And it's funny because a lot of my conservative friends actually have jokingly, but not so jokingly, referred to this book as the conservative book. They're not controversial opinions.
Yeah. It's just, I mean, it's like what men are into. Building shit. You know what I mean? So, like, let's do more of it.
Yeah, and I think when I have these conversations with my more conservative friends, I actually think we have a lot more in common than we have to disagree about. We can all agree that society would probably be a better place if we had universal health care, less homelessness, more green energy, right? We all kind of agree on those things, but we disagree on how to reach that. And I think the cool thing about the abundance theory is it kind of flips it in the sense that we don't necessarily need to pick one or the other. We can have all of that. Like, we can have universal healthcare. Why can't we have that? We pay so much in healthcare.
I would argue because the people benefiting, financially, like the corporate interests and the healthcare companies.
Maybe it's about a populism. Like, maybe abundance actually would do well with like a populist political mindset, right? Because if there is a lot of agreement across the left and the right about these things that you're talking about, and I would also say, like, I think broadly what's the most popular with everybody? Taxing the wealthy. Literally everybody gets on board with that. You know, unless somebody's...
Well, there are populations that are lower income that are actually not in favor of that because they think that they are going to be part of the 1% in the future.
I feel
they
like
kind of vote against their own interests.
I think that has to be just... I mean, that's...
You think that's bunk?
I just think that's... I do. I think that taxing the wealthy, or at least having the tax rate be the same for wealthy people as it is for not wealthy people. I think everybody agrees with that. I just wonder if there is like a broadly populist politics that could be built under the guise of this vision that doesn't necessarily fall very hard along the right and left line, kind of like what you're saying.
Well, I think
Trump won a lot of the vote of lower income Americans too, right? And sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but actually, that's one of the things that the New York Mag article goes into about how Ezra Klein is a bit... The point of this book is actually to try to pull the left a little bit closer to center to win more books. And that was a big part of that article, is about how there's this movement... They were talking about that conference, right? There was a conference that was
like an abundance conference, kind of.
And Ezra Klein was even saying, like, oh, I wish we had more Democrats that were pro-life. Right?
At the conference?
He didn't say that at the conference. I think he's written an article where he's...
Oh, right. He was just saying the tent should be wider. Like in Missouri, we should be running pro-life Democrats.
Which I think is like so stupid because it's like the majority of the country is in favor of abortion, right? So that just seems like such a stupid issue to pick out as like that's where we need to like widen our coalition. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that was an odd issue to pick, right?
I think he's in his heart of hearts. He's pretty conservative, Ezra.
I think ultimately the point is that we just need to win elections, right? And
I think part of winning elections is that the Democrats they're not cute and they're annoying.
Yeah, but I think, again, like, if we look at what's happening in New York, it's like we have a candidate who has a broad appeal, and we have billionaires coming in and spending a lot of money to veto that. And I think that's, Ezra Klein doesn't really care to look at that aspect of it, like kind of the Bernie Sanders opposition to money in politics. And
yeah, because because the real question is like, because the billionaires, I don't think that the billionaire class wants there to be an abundance of resources for everybody else, because then their abundance won't seem so great,
Or maybe they think that it's the taxes are going to be on them to provide that abundance.
Yeah, I just this is fundamentally this book, Abundance, the vision. It shows that it plays out it doesn't ever really mention income inequality in it to any extent that I saw.
No, and it actually goes so far as when he's talking about homelessness, he cites something that says that actually poverty rates don't actually correlate with homelessness. The only
correlate is the lack of housing being built.
Yeah.
So I just feel like I think he is being naive, because I don't think that I don't think Peter Thiel is going to get on board with abundance. Because what Peter Thiel wants is, he doesn't want a democracy. He wants a fiefdom in the sea, floating. You heard about this when he's trying to build an ocean, his city in the ocean, that are run by techno-futurist dictators. And I just I think Ezra, he may want to move everybody to the center, but he's naive to think that there won't be opposition to his vision of a world that gives more to everyone. Yeah,
and I think Peter Thiel, I don't think anyone's necessarily counting on Peter Thiel to come on board, to their political movement.
Who runs the world? Yeah. But I just do we capture heart and minds with a call for class warfare, or do we capture heart and minds with a really benign, benevolent vision of the future where everybody gets what they need? What gets the blood going? You know what I mean? I don't really know.
I think one simple thing that he calls for is just fast tracking certain government procedures, and we're already seeing that on the ticket in the election this week. There's a measure to make it easier to build affordable housing. So it's already starting to take shape.
So, and again, something I've mentioned on the podcast, but the developers of the Barclays Center, they got certain tax benefits in exchange for promising to provide a certain amount of affordable housing. And they had a deadline for that. And the deadline came and went. And they were supposed to be fined per unit that they failed to deliver.
And they were not fined.
Eric Adams just waived that. So again, when we're talking about the bureaucracy and how hard it is to build affordable housing, who is that? Who is reaping the benefits of that? Who has the money to sidestep those regulations and build whatever the fuck they want and give nothing back to the city, Yeah.
I think briefly going back to the New York Mag that we were talking about, I think it's a bit unfair to pit abundance against socialism or even Bernie Sanders. I know Bernie Sanders has said some things that are critical of the abundance book, but I don't think those are diametrically opposing viewpoints, right? You can be an abundance kind of politician while also believing in socialism.
Yeah, and I think it's more about how we get there versus that varies versus the actual outcomes, because I think the Bernie Sanders coalition, they support green energy, they support universal health care, they support housing rights,
I will say that's where Ezra Klein has me convinced, and I don't know if it was not just him, I was listening to somebody else talk about it, but the Democratic model has been oh, okay, so housing is expensive, we'll give you Section 9. Food's expenses, we'll give you SNAP. Healthcare is too expensive, we'll give you Medicare. That as opposed to building systems where people can just get a job. You were saying this earlier. People can just get a job and make enough money to pay for their life. The kind of more liberal version has been we'll just recompensate you for this thing you can't afford. But ultimately, I think what that does to people psychologically is it tells them that they need handouts to function in this world. And wouldn't it be better if everybody could just earned their keep and things were available at a reasonable cost. So we weren't like, oh, you're having such a hard time. We'll help you. We're the Democratic Party. We're going to give you what you need. Because then everybody feels like they're taking, they're going around collecting charity. And I don't know if that's good for the soul of the nation.
It's not. And nobody wants to be on no one chooses to get a Section 8 voucher. Mm-hmm. Like, it's incredibly complicated to get housing. There's like so much landlord, discrimination against Section 8. Like, nobody like wakes up in the morning and is like, I'm gonna figure out today how I can like wile my way through the system to get
my family
welfare.
does commit welfare fraud.
Okay,
so there are some people who commit welfare fraud.
I know someone who's living in a shelter, and they recently got a Section 8 voucher, and then they got scammed by someone, and then their Section 8 voucher expired, and now they have to wait a certain amount of time to get a new one. And like that I think is the more common experience than like your family scamming the welfare system.
Yeah, do you want to tell us more about that?
I probably should.
You probably shouldn't.
Yeah.
That's okay. We can connect offline.
Yeah.
One thing that he talks about in the book is he mentions kind of like how boarding houses used to be a staple of cities, and how they, since home values became
the primary source of people's wealth was the home that they owned.
Yeah, and then so that kind of generates NIMBYism, right? Because
you have to protect the asset that you have if it's your main asset, and but we have to be able to provide some kind of low cost housing to people, and boarding houses are a great way to do it. But then all these neighborhoods, all these cities imposed all these zoning restrictions because they didn't want that on their block. Not in my backyard, but bring back the boarding house. That sounds kind of sexy.
Well, so I was gonna say, my dad used to live in an SRO on the Upper West Side.
I used to live in a recently converted SRO in the Tenderloin.
Really?
Yeah, that was gnarly. 6th and Howard.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's in the heart of it.
Yeah. Okay. So he lived.
But weren't you glad to have a place to live?
Yes, it was. That's when I was in my cups. It was gnarly back then. But yes, I was glad to have a place to live.
Well, this is just kind of a fun anecdote. But before my dad lived in the SRO, I think it was on 99th between Riverside and Amsterdam. Which I actually later lived on that same exact street. But that was when the Upper West Side was a little bit of a Wild West situation. But before that, he actually lived in a ping pong hall.
What?
On 86 and Broadway.
What is that?
A ping pong hall. It's like a
where you go to
space where there's a lot of ping pong tables. And it was run by Marty Supreme, who Josh Safdie just made a movie with Timothée Chalamet. And then, about Marty Supreme's glory days, and then many years later, he was
just housing folks like your
he
dad.
was running a ping pong hall on 86 and Broadway, and he let like homeless teenagers crash in the ping pong hall.
That's beautiful.
Ping pong hall.
Yeah.
Holy shit.
That's beautiful. That's the kind of city we're looking for, a city full of ping pong halls and affordable housing.
Runaway teens living in your ping pong halls.
There's a bunch of those in San Francisco.
Yeah.
Like in the Sunset, actually. There's at the Sunset Rec Center.
Yeah.
I used to go there and play basketball, and there's like a back corner with maybe 4 or 5 ping pong tables, and that's just where all the Asian uncles, grandpas would go every single day and play ping pong all day.
What I love about San Francisco is like there would always be people doing Tai Chi, like in the fog, in the morning, in the parks. Is it still like that?
I haven't lived there in 15 years, so.
Yeah. But that's what I miss. Do you know what I mean?
They do that here too.
Just
in Chinatown.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
That's where you gotta go.
Yeah.
Speaking of Chinatown and China, I like this is also like in the book, I feel like Ezra Klein like kind of latches onto something and gets like really obsessed with it. And he brought it up multiple times, but when they were trying to build a high-speed rail, there was a storage facility that they like tried to eminent domain and they couldn't move. And he like makes a reference to like, well, in China, like they don't have to deal with that. But actually in China, they do have to deal with that. And there are like crazy photos online you can look up of like a single family home.
No, have you heard
in the
about
middle of a highway?
Oh no, there's this one guy who built this 6-story building out of wooden slats. Have you guys seen this?
No.
That everybody in his city is trying to get him to tear down. And you have to climb by ladders and it's held up by pulleys and everybody's so fucking mad at him that he won't tear it down. But he refuses. And it's like out of an Edward Gorey book, or it's like incredible. And he will not tear it down.
Yeah, so they actually kind of have a respect for private property in China.
You might need to bring in an eminent domain expert in China as one of your next guests.
Well, that's kind of what I was wondering. I was like, why don't they just put the line around the storage facility? You know what I mean? Like, that's what they do in China. They just build the highway around the house, and then it like kind of sucks because your house is on a highway. I mean, the photos are like pretty incredible.
Really?
Yeah.
I would not expect that at all.
Yeah, interesting.
You said you wanted to talk about degrowth.
No, we don't have to talk about it. It's so boring. It's too predictable. I don't want to talk about it.
One quick thing I want to talk about was I listened to one of your episodes from I think 2 or 3 weeks ago about Ezra.
Shut up, Ezra Klein.
Shut up, Ezra Klein. And you mentioned, just to be clear, he allegedly has an open marriage.
I can tell you, verified, has an open marriage. So that's part of abundance that he's really taking it in all directions. Yeah, but you know what? I've as I said, I've changed. I don't give a fuck about Ezra anymore. I have bigger fish to fry. So
I wonder if his open marriage started recently, because I was listening to a podcast where the host was like talking about how Ezra had a glow up, and like I think he started working out. He started the beard.
Dude, he has a new headshot where he's like laughing for his podcast. It's so gay. It's embarrassing.
But you don't care anymore.
But I don't. I don't really care. What I care about is this election. You know? So
are you voting yes on the housing ballot questions? Do you not want to say?
I think I'm going to vote yes on that.
I'm voting yes on them. And I'm also convincing others to vote yes on them.
I think one of the interesting ballot measures is to put the mayoral race in the same election cycle as the presidential race.
We're staunchly against.
No, I'm undecided.
I really don't know how to think about that.
I think if we can get a communist elected to New York City, then we should have elections in off years. I'm all for minor.
What about those two things?
Like because it's a much smaller turnout for the mayoral election. So if we can get.
Yeah, I mean, the arguments for are that it would save like $46 million, which who knows what they would use that for. And then also that like there's more investment in the bigger election years. So like people who are old or disabled, like they can get to the polls easier and stuff.
Okay.
I think we should keep it on off years. Keep the people who really care make the decisions.
If it goes through, then Zoran would get an extra year as mayor.
If he wins.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, I need to research that, but I was wondering how that would function. But wouldn't it be? So. Oh yeah, I guess it's off. It's not even 2 years. It's like 1 year off from the presidential election.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Okay, guys, I feel like we have to wrap it up.
This was really great. I think we should do another book club episode, and I think we should do Utopia of Rules because it's kind of like an interesting companion piece to Abundance.
Is that the David Graeber book?
Mm-hmm.
Is it also like 500 pages?
No, it's not as big as Debt.
Because I thought Debt should have just been an essay. It's like 500 pages.
No, actually, there's a 25-page essay that is the first chapter, I think, to Utopia of Rules. We could just read that.
Okay, more manageable bite size.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for having me.
Of course. Thank you for bringing your male, rational, centrist perspective to things. I'll tell you, I need it sometimes. You know what I mean?
It was grounding. Thank you for mansplaining abundance to us.
It's been lovely. Let's do it again.
Okay, well, class dismissed.
Bye.
Bye.